Scorpio, this is your week ahead astrology forecast from Astrology Motivation by Born Without Boundaries. What we are going to do is go over the major planetary aspects and transits as they relate to and impact your natal sun. So, how do you know where your natal sun is? You get your natal chart, and you can get those for free online anywhere. Just search engine them. You'll need your birth date, your birth time, and your birthplace. FYI. Now, I will give you the relevant or the relative dates that sort of translate in where the degrees are, but ultimately, to be most specific, you should get that information. You should get that information from your natal chart where your natal sun is located. So, if your natal sun is located between 0 and 9 degrees Scorpio, you are a Scorpio 1 because your sun falls within the first decan of Scorpio. If your natal sun is located somewhere between 10 and 19 degrees Scorpio, you are a Scorpio 2 because your natal sun falls within the second decan of Scorpio. And if your natal sun falls between, I think we're on 20 to 29 degrees Scorpio, you are a Scorpio 3 because your natal sun falls in the third decan of Scorpio. Why is this important? Could be the difference between a trine and a square. Could be the difference between a square and a sextile. And that's why so many times, because I read your comments, you're like, I don't really relate to this at all. My life is fine. My life is good. But it's like picking up on the major energy, which is about change and turmoil. Well, I mean, the difference between a square and a trine, especially when it's to Pluto or something like Mars or something like Saturn, is quite big. And so some of you could be experiencing major changes, painful changes in your life, while others are experiencing an unprecedented feeling of power and strength and authority and the ability to move life where you want to move it. So it all depends on the angle that these planets are playing to your natal sun. And so this is really why I break it down into the decans this way, so I can get very, very specific with how it's impacting you. A lot of things are transiting between the decans now, so it is important that you listen to the whole video, because what might be impacting you in the beginning of the week may subside by the end of the week, and then somebody else may be impacted. So it really is sort of that transfer of energy that's going on, and it doesn't have a hard cutoff, right? You could still be feeling the energy as it transits into the next decan. So check out the whole video. What we're going to do is start really, really broad with the major planetary transits that are going to impact everybody. Something like a full moon, or a planet going from full moon, a new moon, a planet going from one zodiac sign into another. It's going to impact everybody. And then we're going to whittle it down to how they are impacting Scorpios, or look at the planets specifically, your ruling dignitaries that impact you wherever they are and whatever they're doing. And then we're going to dig down into the decans to see how everything is specifically impacting your natal suns. So let's start really broad. On April 11th, today, if you're watching this on Tuesday, Venus transits into Gemini. We talked a little bit about that last week, but because it would impact some of you by the end of last week. But she transits officially into Gemini this week. So that's April 11th, like I said. She transits from Taurus, where she's really cozy, really comfortable. She likes to stay at home. She doesn't really like to be that social. She likes to focus on being with who she wants and who she loves. It's a very sensual, sexual, pleasure-focused energy when she is in Taurus, but then it moves to Gemini. Now, this is very different because Venus in Gemini is very much friend-based. She's very much conversation-based. Words will matter in your relationships, in our relationships, now more than ever. And yes, she is impacting specific Scorpios in a tense way, and we'll go over who that is as we get into the decans. So this is a sense of being more attracted to somebody's mind, or words meaning more than they usually do. And I don't mean subtextually, I mean analytically, like people really listening to the way they're spoken to, and just the eloquence of somebody else's ability to even handle words makes a big difference now, because she's very attracted when she's in Gemini to intellect and conversations. Conversations are a wonderful way to share and spend time with each other now. Also, friendships. So if you are dating, this is not a time to get into a serious relationship. And any relationship that begins now will begin as friendship and will begin more casually. Venus in Gemini does not like to be pressured into a long-term relationship. Just hold up, y'all. If you want a long-term relationship, wait for the bitch to move into Cancer, because you know she's going to be all about long-term relationships when she gets into Cancer. So this is a really good time for you to just get to know somebody, get to know their personality, date around, see who you like. It's not a great time to rush into anything serious, but instead enjoy the idea of people instead of and enjoy people's ideas instead of trying to rush into making them something else. Just FYI. Pluto this week. So Pluto is still at 0 degrees Aquarius, and we talk about Pluto because Pluto is your ruling dignitary. Now, Pluto does not move a lot. It goes very slowly. So, that's why you're a fixed sign, right? There's just a sense of you're going to be the way you are for quite some time. You don't really love to change, and when change happens, it's rapturous and it's huge and it's extreme. So Pluto just experienced that because it transited from Capricorn into Aquarius. And I got to tell you, over the next year and a half, you're going to continue to experience major bumpy change because Pluto will go retrograde back into Capricorn, then it'll come back into Aquarius, retrograde one more time into Capricorn, then stay in Aquarius for like decades. So, or maybe like 15 years. I got to check that. But over the next year and a half, things are going to be changing a lot for you. They are just going to be back and forth with you. And so if it doesn't feel like anything is sticking, it's because your ruling dignitary, which rarely ever changes, is going through a major change now. And so will your lives reflect that. Scorpio this week is square to the nodes, will be square to the nodes for quite some time. The nodes will actually move faster than Scorpio does. And it's going to be trine to Venus by Sunday, the 16th of April. So this, by the way, this timeline, this video covers April 11th through April 17th. So that's the week that we're talking about here, April 11th through the 17th. So Venus is going to be trine to Pluto by the 16th. That will last for about 4 or 5 days, which is quite harmonious in terms of how things are flowing and how things are going. But it won't last long. And the square to the nodes simply mean it's more sort of universal when it comes to our planet. People are changing. People, communities, what we think is fair and just and right is going through a major transition and a major switcheroo, and it's not going to come back. Once these changes are made, they are permanent, and then society afterwards has to build on top of whatever's happened. And that will really start to feel those changes over the next year and a half as Pluto settles in more permanently to Aquarius. FYI, Mars is moving between 8 and 11 degrees Cancer. And Mars is your traditional ruler. So wherever that motherfucker is always going to impact you. So keep an eye on where he is. And he moves a lot faster than Pluto does. So there is definitely an aspect to your character that wants to shift. And that is your sex drive, your motivation, your inspiration, your passion, like all of those things is driven by Mars. Maybe even your body and your physicality is all driven by Mars, and you're definitely impacted by where Mars is. And Mars is in Cancer now. That is a natural trine to most of you guys, and as it moves into the second decan of Cancer, it's going to be trine to all y'all. So ultimately, there is a sense of harmony. There could be a sense of harmony when it comes to your bodies, a sense of harmony when it comes to your motivation and direction, a sense of flow between when your natal suns are trine to Mars. There's a sense of controlled energy, of harmonious energy, of harmonious action taking. So this is going to be actually a really sweet time for you. During this whole week, Mars is going to be sextile to Mercury, and that means especially when it comes to words or communications, there is going to be a fluency of action for all Scorpios. You'll feel this impact, this sense of information coming in and information being clear. This will help out a lot because as we get to the end of this week, Mercury is definitely going into shadow periods. So you want as much information now as you can to contemplate, to think about. And if you're going to take action, take it with thought and take it with learning. Don't try to take it and make it official at this point. I don't think it's smart because the shadow period for Mercury retrograde has already started and that really won't pass till the end of May. FYI. Let's go into the decans to see more specifically what's going on with you guys. So Scorpio ones, and this would definitely be October Scorpios. If your birthday is in October and you're a Scorpio one. Scorpio ones, your natal sun is conjunct to the south node, which is at 4 degrees Scorpio. That means comfort zone. It also means embracing who you are, where you come from, and what you're good at. Of course, it also means that your natal sun is in opposition to the north node, which means that you can feel and understand life is changing and it may not feel like it's in your control, which is what would kind of give you a red flag of, I don't really like this. I wish it would slow down a little bit. Is it going to slow down? No, it is not. It is what it is. I mean, it's sort of a lesson in as the world turns, right? And that's exactly where the nodes come from, as the world turns. And so your natal sun is going through a understanding of a blossoming. Let's say it's a blossoming. It's a realization of change or the need for it. That is long term and it really will not stop impacting you until July when the nodes slip into Libra and Aries. So be prepared that for the next 3 months there is that challenge, that personal challenge of getting out of the comfort zone or accepting one's self, accepting what you're talented at and seeing how do I apply that to where I'm going and where I'm headed. Your natal sun, Scorpio ones, are also trine to Saturn, which means harmony when it comes to rules, laws, and regulations, but it's square to Pluto, which is your ruling dignitary, which means there are challenges that are coming from global changes or extremes, taking things to extremes or realizing that, or almost feeling pushed into permanence, pushed into permanence, and what kind of challenge that can bring. There's a sextile to Mars that is basically impacting you this week. The trine to Saturn and the square to Pluto is long term. So these will last for the next year or so. And ultimately, it's the push and pull of, I want things to change. Things are being extreme. The reason why I'll tell you how this is going to impact you. You know, a trine to Saturn, but a square to Pluto. Because Pluto doesn't give a shit about the rules, laws, and regulations. Pluto only cares about universal law. Doesn't care about human law, which is what Saturn upholds. So basically what it is I think there's a mentality now of clinging to human law or commitment or promises because you're trying to avoid major changes that you know are unavoidable. And that can really be causing a clash within you, and the more you resist, the harder and more painful you make it for yourself. And Scorpios can endure a whole ton of pain, but understand that this kind of resistance with Pluto could also impact those you love around you. So just FYI. This week, what is impacting you this week specifically is a trine to Mars by Friday, the 14th of April. Now, that means that you will have energy and you will have confidence to take action on things, especially because Mars is in Cancer, around family matters, or a sense of, but you told me you did this, I locked you into a commitment, and letting people know that you sort of have the upper hand when it comes to commitments, but Pluto may not agree with you. You know what I'm saying? I'm just letting you know that there are changes happening around you that you cannot control, and you will be clashing with them and feeling that impact from that challenge for the next year and a half. FYI, we also have a quincunx to Venus, and a quincunx to Venus means there's irritation when it comes to financial issues of value, what you value, what turns you on, how you want to be valued, who you're attracted to, maybe even your romantic relationships, a sense of not getting out of them what you want or what you want to put in. And that's going to impact you predominantly this week. Venus and Mars both move relatively quickly, so it won't be that long term. But in conjunction with all, not like astrology conjunction, but with everything else that's going on, I wrote down a statement that I want you guys to think about. Mindset of not wanting change or wanting things to stay the same. So changes are going to feel painful, could feel very painful, especially when it comes this week to Venus situations, financial situations, what's going on in your relationships, and in general, sort of having your life move forward but not really wanting it to, and falling back on that cushy cozy trine with Saturn, saying, well, it's not the law, it's not legal, so I don't have to do it, or you made this commitment to me, so you're going to keep it. But what if they don't want to? And what if people around don't? And like, you know, it's almost like a sense you can only make somebody keep a commitment to the extent that they still care. If they don't care, or the laws themselves are being broken or changed, then there's really nothing that you can do, and that might cause a lot of frustration in your life. It doesn't mean that you're right or wrong or good or bad. This is just where the major tension is coming from right now. Scorpio 2s, we have your natal suns getting the least amount of impact right now, so it's actually good. By 4/16, so by April 16th, which is Sunday, yeah. Your natal suns are going to go into a trine with Mars. So in the beginning of the week, it's Scorpio 1s, but by the end of the week, it's Scorpio 2s, and then that will last into the week after. And a trine to Mars means confidence in motion. It means confidence and initiative. It means a sense of harmony, maybe even with your body and how you physically feel. Also a sense of just getting back into a more physical routine, or confidence and harmony with taking action, or with what you're interested in and where your passions are. We also have, however, a quincunx to Chiron, which is challenging energy. I mean, it's challenging energy when it's like, okay, I want to start moving forward. It almost feels to me like healing, because there is a sense of there's still frustration when it comes from, you know, the hardships, the suffering. It's almost like I just want the suffering to be over now. But with this trine to Mars, some of that suffering is going to subside, especially more physical suffering, or where your passions are, or how you take initiative, this sense of maybe even in some ways being inspired and feel right by taking action, by having gone through some hard lessons and some suffering that has taught you, well, I need to start taking more action. I actually feel better taking action now, because I don't want to have to go through what I went through before. That kind of energy. I wrote down a summary statement. Hold on. Wanting the suffering to be over or be for a purpose, and finding time right now, or finding inspiration, finding that purpose this week to at least start getting things moving forward. And if there has been physical suffering, finding some harmony and healing with that this week. Now for Scorpio 3s, your natal suns, if you were born at the very end of Scorpio 3, and that would be the Scorpio Sagittarius cuspers. You guys are going to be sextile to Pluto for the next year and a half. And that means some beautiful changes are happening to your life. This is your butterfly period. So those Scorpios born in the beginning of Scorpio season are square to Pluto. That's a rough situation, and that's the difference between the decans, right? Whereas you Scorpio Sagittarius cuspers, this is your butterfly period. This is the time when you're happy to let things go and you want the new to start. You're ready to get out of that cocoon. There is an expansion and broadening, and all the changes in the world are going to bring opportunities for you instead of to hinder you and challenge you. So there is an expansion. It's a wing spreading period, or the phoenix rising period right now for you guys. And that's a long-term transit. So over the next year and a half, that's what's going to be happening for you guys. You are, however, if you're born at the very end, of Decan 3, you are square to Saturn. And now Saturn is going to move. It's also going to move back. But it's going to be basically square to your natal suns this whole year. What does that mean? Laws, rules, and regulations. You're not going to get. You're going to, like, your expansion is not going to your expansion, the expansion that's destined for you that you cannot resist, is going to get in the way of and irritate and maybe even conflict with promises that you've made, contracts that you've signed, or with authority figures around you. And you'll see over the next year that those clashes are constantly going to be coming up. You're also trying to Neptune. So there is a sense or a harmony in your psychic energy, your psychic abilities. Also a sense of creativity that comes through when your natal sun is trine to Neptune. This is a very dreamy but psychic. And it's almost like, in a sense, free-flowing when it comes to, well, things are going to surprise me. And the stuff that I can't control, I have more harmony with. Right? Because the control that's trying to come at me from the outside, I'm starting to see how really bad that is, how really hurtful that is. And it starts to make you realize over the next year that control is not necessarily your friend, right? It's a sense of, it can be a very, very bad thing, especially when somebody's trying to control you. Those are long-term transits. The transits that are going to impact you this week is your quincunx to Jupiter and quincunx to the sun, the actual sun where the sun is positioned now. Both of those are in Aries, and they are in quincunx to your natal sun. What does that mean? This expansion feels like it's coming too quickly, or wanting to expand too quickly and not being able to. It's just sort of exciting you and inspiring you and giving you goals, but at the same time not really necessarily giving you resources, or you don't necessarily have the resources to be able to do it. So if you can keep that motivation and calm yourself down enough to learn and go slower, you can use this energy instead of this energy frustrating you and using you. Just an FYI, that's this week. If you were born at the very, very, very end of Scorpio season, those are the Scorpio Sag cuspers. By Saturday, the 15th, your natal suns are going to be in direct opposition to Venus as she transits into Gemini. I will say this to you right now. This means that there is dynamic change and a constant frustration or rub when it comes to your relationships, when it comes to the weak parts of your relationships coming front and center. And this could mean some dynamic changes for you guys when it comes to who you're attracted to, who you want to be with, who wants to be with you, or some financial stress there too. Major dynamic changes. Could be good, could be bad, but because it's an opposition, it's not in your control. So I think the long-term lesson for the next year and a half is getting you comfortable with change and letting you see that things that are not in your control are not always against you, and things trying to control you or control in general is not always your friend. And so there is kind of this switch or change when it comes to comfort levels in things just flowing, and faith. Finding faith. When the sun trines to Neptune, which your natal suns are, it's all about finding faith again, believing in faith, and finding the power that comes from having faith and finding faith and not needing to control the situation, but instead trusting the situation more. The major thing you're going to experience this week, though, is that opposition to Venus as she moves into Gemini, for those of you at the very end of Scorpio season, and that quincunx to Jupiter and the sun as they move through the third decan of Aries. So major frustration when it comes to your expansion, your growth versus where your value is or who values you. Those are the things that you're going to be really facing and impacting now. If you have any comments about how all this is impacting you, please let me know. I would love to hear how it's impacting you. And definitely subscribe to this channel and ring that notification bell so that you know when I upload your favorite content, and so that you can participate in the live astrology chats here when I go live. I did take a break for Easter Sunday, Monday, but normally I go live every single Monday and sometimes on Fridays. So check that out. Definitely subscribe. And please do join me for your week ahead tarot card reading over on Born Without Boundaries Tarot. I love you guys so much, and I will see you in the videos. Bye, Scorpio.